Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Fanfiction 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Akatasuki Naruto built harem with Kushina Kurenai Shizune Tsunade, Naruto X Harem, Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. 00 Training Ground 700. Hey Kakashi-sensei, can you help me train for the finals? Naruto asked after resting from his victory in the preliminary rounds against Kiba Inuzuka, where he vowed to win for the sake of his friend Hinata Hyuga, the heiress of the Hyuga clan, for the finals which is coming up in 2 months. No Naruto, I gotta train Sasuke. His promotion to Chunin is riding on him winning. The only reason you're here in the first place is because the Chunin exams require 3 genin to enter as a team, he said uninterested while reading his porn, with Sasuke giving a smug grin as he was getting his way. Yeah, Naruto baka, just go away and stop bothering Sasuke-kun. The team's resident fangirl and next possible spoil of war, Sakura Haruno, daughter of the civilian council head Sakura Haruno. The girl is considered Kunoichi of the year for the fact that she only passed due to her book smarts when in terms of combat she's as poor as a first-year academy student, as Sasuke was considered the genin of the year because the academy instructors kissed Hi-san tweaked his grades since the beginning. As he rid himself of the ringing sensation in his head after the near concussive blow to the skull mixed with her screech, he watched them all walk away as they missed the large burst of killer intent sent their way from Naruto himself. Thought they would never leave. If I had the strength I would wipe out Konoha and be done with it. Acting that chipper every day is literally killing me. Just calm down, Naruto. When you get the strength it will all be for the better when you can take your himes and get the hell out of here, he thought as he picked himself up, brushing dirt off his orange monstrosity he called clothing. He knew full well about his family, as his name wasn't just Naruto Uzumaki. No, that was the half-lie that Sarutobi gave the village to keep them clueless. His full name was Naruto Uzumaki Uchiha Namikaze Senju, son of Kushina Uzumaki Uchiha and Minato Namikaze Senju. He also knew about Sarutobi and his student Jiraiya's plan to make him into a loyal weapon to use the power of Kurama, otherwise known as the Kyuubi no Kitsune, as they've lied to his godmother and cousin Tsunade about him dying as a way to keep him from knowing the love of a family, as well as making his status as a Jinchuriki, which was meant to be kept secret as it had always been, became public, causing the village, save for those who were kind to him, to treat him with hatred. He knew it all, and when he found out he told the few who he was truly loyal to of his findings. The second Chunin exams instructor Anko Mitarashi and her friends Yugao Azuki, Hana Inuzuka, as well as her clan, Kurenai Uehi, and Hinata Hyuga, with the ramen stand owner Tsuki Ichiraku and Ayame Ichiraku. Like him, they were tired of the way the village went south with its arrogance and wanted to see it knocked down a few pegs or more, so to watch it burn as the history of the village was erased into nothingness, like they betrayed his clan in sabotaging Uzu's defenses and intended to get revenge for his family. Brushing the various dark thoughts aside, he walks to his hidden training ground to practice his true skills that he kept hidden from the world, as his Sharingan activated, forming a 6-bladed curved shuriken with a 3-pointed star in the center. Before he broke a genjutsu he had on his right hand to reveal a seal which brought out an abnormally long katana that was at least 8 feet in length. Meditating with his sword Masamune placed on his lap, he closed his eyes as he evened his breathing as he thought over his skills. Before Azane Itachi went rogue, she trained him in secret since he was a child, and because of her training she taught him all the forms of the shinobi life, lying and seduction being 2 of his most useful, as he managed to get around difficult questions that involved him and knew what to say to get a girl pretty hot under the collar. Though his actual skills lied in the shinobi arts, and lying of course. She always said he was a kitsune at heart. With her help she made him as strong as her when she was in the Anbu, and trained his Sharingan as she too supported his ideals concerning Konoha after they made her execute her entire family save for her brother, as was the request of the village to make more Uchiha who followed the village's command. Getting up he created several hundred clones as he got into his beginning stance as they all charged at him. Oh with Azane, oh. Hey Azane, you sure this is where the cutie is? I mean, I know Leader Sama wanted him, but how are we going to get him without the village going into alert? Her companion, a tall blue-skinned beauty who had what looked like gills on her cheeks with two on each with sharp yellow eyes and a slashed kiri headband, asked with a large bandaged sword on her back as the two wore identical black trench coats with red clouds spread across them. She nodded, her long midnight blue hair bobbing with each step as she said while traversing the trees, "Yes, Kishi, he usually trains here in this hidden training ground to not have anyone spy on him. That's why Yuri has had a hard time tracking him to an exact location, but I know he frequents 3 places, his parents' home being one." Hopping to another tree as a serene feeling washed over them, she counted off the second, the next being a ramen stand whose owner's daughter is quite fond of him. As they stopped on another tree when they came into view to see a largely destroyed training ground with a tall blonde-haired youth, albeit shorter than his fellow genin and lacked muscle mass due to poor nutrition thanks to Konoha and them keeping a close eye on him. He still had slight muscle to gain a woman's attention should they look. He was contentedly lying on his back shirtless with his eyes closed as his headband was clutched in his hand as a stainless steel onyx lightning bolt was resting on his chest. And lastly, the training ground I trained Naruto-kun in since he was a child, she said with a barely noticeable smile before it vanished as she looked to her right to see her partner and friend drooling while looking at his chest. Wow, would you look at him, he's packing some serious muscle. Who would have thought with the fact he wears that orange monstrosity? I wonder what he's packing in the basement. She said before shutting up as Azane gave her a stern glare. She was about to say something until they heard, "For two tenshi to grace me with their elegance and beauty makes me wonder what I did in a past life to be rewarded so. Though Azane sensei, if I knew you and your lovely friend were coming, I would have cleaned up a bit." She and Kishi blushed, looked down to see Naruto himself standing up with a smile as his eyes were closed. "I mean, look at me covered in dirt and blood, my hair is a mess and I reek of sweat, I must look a sight." She gave a soft giggle that sounded like music to his ears as she said, "It's great to hear your witty humor, Naruto-kun, but in all seriousness our leader wants you." All humor left his face as he said, "And I'm going to take a shot in the dark and say this leader is of the Akatsuki, the group who are hunting the Jinchuriki, or more so the Biju they contain." She nodded, making him frown slightly before he reached for Masamune as he sealed it away. And activated another seal on his right shoulder, unleashing a long black katana with a 3-pronged extensions on the bladed side as a long chain hung reaching the ground as well as its sheath, which he placed on his left hip, saying, "Then if you are going to take me Azane sensei, how about a spar for old time's sake? I want to see how I fare compared to back when you were originally training me." She nodded as she brought out her old Anbu katana as she turned to Kishi saying, "Keep an eye out for anyone in case we have to run." The shark woman nodded as she created a few water clones to look over the area while interested to see how the fight would turn out. "Oh, Hokage's office, oh, sensei." The aged Kage heard, causing him to turn to the window as his only student inside Konoha sat outside of. "Jiraiya, shouldn't you be training Naruto?" he asked as Jiraiya shook his head in a negative, making his eyes narrow. "I looked all over the village for him but I can't find him. He must be training on his own then," he said, scratching his chin watching his leader growl. "Damn it, let's not worry, we have 2 months and when he comes back you'll take him as an apprentice and try to instill loyalty into him, furthering his drive to be Hokage to earn the village's respect," he said, trying to keep their plan on the rails as he nodded. "It's Naruto's sworn duty to become their weapon and to gain control of the elemental nations with them on top as they rightfully should." The sage nodded before giggling perversely and running towards the closest hot spring as he smoked his pipe, thinking, "Once Jiraiya trains him, I'll have him alter the Shiki Fuin to make sure every time he taps into the Kyuubi's chakra he'll be struck with thoughts of loyalty towards the village, though I just can't figure out where that boy is. Oh well, he'll turn up." Oh, Akatsuki base, oh. Inside the Akatsuki base was a large statue which appeared to have had 9 eyes on it, with its hands shackled as they were raised upwards as if trying to catch something with its mouth wide open. On each finger were women of notorious rank as kunoichi, and on the head of the ominous statue were 2 other women. Both had red hair with black streaks as the 2 wore some kind of mask. The shorter of the two masked women said in a deathly tone as her whirlpool-styled mask covered her face save for an eye-hole that showed a Sharingan with a red lotus in a black sun. Do the two of you mind explaining why the Kyuubi Jinchuriki was retrieved with severe injuries? Even though her tone was even, it sent a slight shiver down all of their spines as Azane said, "Well, Leader Samawi went to catch Naruto-kun as directed, and he even knew who the two of us were yet showed no fear." That got a few raised eyebrows as a genin not only knew of 2's rank kunoichi but also lacked any signs of fear. Thinking she prompted for her to continue, "Anyways, he greeted us, and well, I think it would be easier showing you than explaining." Forming several hand signs she said, "Ninpo, Jiken no Kagami, ninja art, mirrors of time." Several screens appeared in front of the women as they all saw a surprising sight. Oh, flashback, oh. Wow, would you look at him, he's packing some serious muscle. Who would have thought with the fact he wears that orange monstrosity? I wonder what he's packing in the basement. She said before shutting up as Azane gave her a stern glare. She was about to say something until they heard, "For two tenshi to grace me with their elegance and beauty makes me wonder what I did in a past life to be rewarded so. Though Azane-sensei, if I knew you and your lovely friend were coming, I would have cleaned up a bit." She and Kishi blushed, looked down to see Naruto himself standing up with a smile as his eyes were closed. "I mean, look at me covered in dirt and blood, my hair is a mess and I reek of sweat, I must look a sight." She gave a soft giggle that sounded like music to his ears as she said, "It's great to hear your witty humor, Naruto-kun, but in all seriousness our leader wants us to retrieve you." All humor left his face as he said, "And I'm going to take a shot in the dark and say this leader is of the Akatsuki, the group who are hunting the Jinchuriki, or more so the Biju they contain." She nodded, making him frown slightly before he reached for Masamune as he sealed it away. And activated another seal on his right shoulder, unleashing a long black katana with a three-pronged extensions on the bladed side as a long chain hung reaching the ground, as well as its sheath, which he placed on his left hip, saying, "Then if you are going to take me as Azane-sensei, how about a spar for old time's sake? I want to see how I fare compared to back when you were originally training me." She nodded as she brought out her old Anbu katana as she turned to Kishi saying, "Keep an eye out for anyone in case we have to run." The shark woman nodded as she created a few water clones to look over the area while interested to see how the fight would turn out. Removing her cloak, she had on her old Anbu armor underneath that strained against her D-cup bust as she squared off against Naruto, who adopted the same expressionless visage. Oh, play the theft Atreyu, oh. The two charged and met in the center as they were coated in sparks before they distanced themselves as Azane created two shadow clones to circle around him and attack at his vital points before he stabbed his Tensa Zangetsu into the ground and pushed himself away. The two clones who missed him ended up stabbing each other as Azane jumped back to avoid getting cut as Naruto used the chain to pull his sword back. "Azane-sensei, I asked you to take this seriously. I'm fighting you at full strength. I would like it if you gave me the full respect," he said as he started a chain of hand signs that for even her were slightly blurred. Futon. Kusaku Fu no Dongan, wind style, drilling wind bullet. Exhaling, he spat out a flurry of compressed balls of wind that swarmed her, causing her to jump away only to have Naruto in front of her as he was about to swing his sword, making her bring hers up in defense. Only for his swinging hand to not have the sword as his left hand caught it and brought it up, only for it to be blocked when a second Azane slowly walked next to him as she wrapped her arms around him and exploded, blowing him back. Skidding to a halt, he looked at his arm to see it slightly singed before another Azane appeared as she repeated the process, except it was Naruto that exploded in a burst of wind. She was pushed back as she was covered in deep cuts which were bleeding rather lightly as a sharp blade of wind flew across the ground where a deep groove appeared in the ground. As it made contact, she burst into a flock of crows, making him curse, especially with the rise in heat. He turned to see a large fireball coming his way, making him substitute with the shirt of the jumpsuit. "Oh, that was a close one," Naruto said, whipping sweat from his brow as a clone appeared as the two fired a volley of fireballs and one large one. "Oh." He formed a series of hand signs and said, "Futon. Kamigami no Shiru, wind style, shell of the wind god. When the barrage of fire jutsu came, they caused a huge explosion that dispersed, showed him using his left arm to shield his face as it was burned up to his shoulder. Fighting the pain in his arm, he pointed up, making her look up to see another Naruto with a Fuma shuriken being tossed in her direction, which she ducked under, missing both Naruto's smirks. From that there was another Naruto who threw several shuriken which had ninja wire on them as he directed where they went and wrapped around her before the shuriken embedded themselves into the ground. With the main wire between his teeth, he thought, "Thanks Tem for the technique." Forming a few signs, he sent out a large dragon made of fire as it skimmed across the wire, hitting her only for there to be a log in her place. Jumping away, he missed a volley of kunai and shuriken as he ducked under a strike with her sword as he kicked her in the stomach and threw another volley of compressed wind while coating his sword in wind. He swung the blade as another blade of wind sliced the ground, this time landing a serious injury on her. The two were physically exhausted, and with the Shiki Fuin on Naruto, his reserves were cut drastically and were about to pass out. She said, "Well Naruto, it seems you're about to collapse. Why don't you give up? There would be no shame in it." Smirking, he said, "Nah, I'm good, but if you want to give up I won't think any less of you, Azane-chan." Smirking, she brought her sword up as Naruto did and charged, getting into close combat until he passed out face first with a large gash across the chest. Panting slightly, she turned to Kishi, who was wide-eyed, making her ask, "What? This is just the first time I've seen you actually put an effort into a fight, even though you were still holding back quite a bit of your strength still, but for him to make you work for the win is still an accomplishment," she said with a fanged grin as her companion rolled her eyes in annoyance. "Just pick up his sword and let's get out of here, alright? Leader Sama wants Naruto-kun and she's never been this forward in anything, neither of them have," Azane said as she picked up Naruto, being cautious of his wounds. Even though Kishi didn't show it, she was pouting on the inside as she watched Azane pick up Naruto while she grabbed his sword and followed quickly behind her. "Oh, stop music, oh, Akatsuki base, oh." All the Akatsuki could do was stare wide-eyed at the images they were shown as one of the two zombie sisters as Hisai, a woman with white hair that was cut on one side with the other coming below her ear and over her eye, while it all came below her jaw. Her cloak was open, showing her chest was covered by bandages, and a black skirt that had a long slit on the side that gave mobility and showed she was wearing bandages to cover her modesty with a rope pulled in a loop attached to a triple-bladed scythe. She said, "Damn, Gaki's fine. Even with that funky seal weakening him, he's still a badass to fight Azane as long as he did, even and on fair ground, and those are muscles I would love to feel." Getting a groan from the girl next to her, who had a tan tone with multiple stitches on her, with her sclera being black with yellow eyes, said, ignoring the possible pedophile, "She got a yukatsu" from her partner as she continued. "However, he shows promise even with the handicap. If he could be given more training, he could even go as far as to be stronger than Leader Sama," she said as she looked at the two on the head. "What are you two intending to do with him? You never really specified why he was so important," she asked as the redhead said. "We were going to tell everyone the plan when he came to us. One of Mayu's paths will bring him in," she said as she looked over to the second redhead with multiple piercings on her body with metallic purple eyes with 6 rings going outward from pupil to sclera. She nodded, saying, "He's still unconscious, but give him time. He has suffered a bit of chakra exhaustion thanks to Orochimaru using that Shiki Fuin on him. It gave perfect chakra control over his beyond cage reserves, although it also reduced said reserves to a low chunin, but thankfully we removed it, so his chakra is restoring itself." The dark-haired female nodded, saying, "Good, alert us when he does wake up so we can start." She nodded and closed her eyes, using her abilities to overshadow the path she assigned to watch over him, as she admittedly found him to be rather attractive, though other than the Shiki Fuin and the seal containing the 9 tails, she felt there was something off about him before she checked him over when a hand gripped her hand tightly enough to hear the bones crack. "Oh, Akatsuki base barracks, oh. What are you doing and who are you?" she heard him say with his eyes still closed, causing her to gasp slightly, not knowing he was awake until she flinched when he squeezed a little harder, making her answer. "I'm Mayu Uzumaki, Kushina's cousin and member of the Akatsuki." After you passed out, Azane and Kishi brought you back here to get your injuries treated and to get that seal taken off your body, she said, relieved when he released his grip. I'm sorry, I tend to keep my guard up around suspicious surroundings. And did you say Uzumaki? I thought they were whipped out during the Third War, he said, sitting up with a wince as she helped him into a sitting position as she sat on the side of his bed. As far as I know, you and I are the only Uzumaki alive, but I question why you have blonde hair when your name is Uzumaki. She questioned when he pointed to a seal on his scalp. The Hokage wants me to bear a resemblance to my father, who was the fourth, so the people would be further enraged, so they would take their anger out on me, so the Hokage could further mold me into a tool so he can take over the elemental nations as the container of the strongest Biju taking the field, he said, looking at her before a slight smile came to his face. Though if I do wonder what it is you all want with little ol' me, he said, standing as he looked down to see he was now wearing a pair of sweatpants as he raised a visible eyebrow at the blushing redhead. What clothing you were wearing was damaged and I was assigned to change your clothing and tend to your injuries, she said, getting an appreciative smile from him which caused her to blush slightly before schooling her emotions and return to her stoic personality. With his smile still in place, he said, well, nonetheless, thank you anyways, so I guess your leader wants to see me for something. She nodded as she closed her eyes again before she opened them again and told him to follow her as he complied, following closely as he has yet to fully recover and found walking difficult. Oh, Akatsuki base, oh. Leader Sama, he is on his way, Mayu said, opening her eyes as the dark-haired woman nodded as she looked at the redhead, who was practically vibrating with excitement for everyone who sees this, wondering why they will soon find out. I brought him, Leader Sama, the redhead said before vanishing as the sole Jinchuriki stood in the middle of everyone as the girls openly ogled him as they all slightly frowned, seeing that he had muscle but it was hardly noticeable due to his malnutrition. After a few moments of awkward silence, he said with a slight wave of the hand, yo. Getting over their mental tirade about his poor health, the leader with the spiky black hair said, hello Naruto Uzumaki Uchiha Namikaze Senju, I see you've already made quite the impression with Azane and Kishi. Giving a slight smirk, he said, as I've told them I must have done something in a past life to be graced with such symbols of beauty. And yes, Azane-chan had told me you all wanted me for something which I would guess involves the overly imposing statue with the 8 open eyes. She nodded, saying, that is correct. You see Naruto, our goal, as you might not know, is to acquire peace in the elemental nations, and to do that is to stop the bloodshed in the lands. He nodded as he said, yes, but to do that you would need to take away the village's main boasting point, the Jinchuriki. But even with that alone, there is the Leaf Village as a whole, save for a few inhabitants. Even though he and the others couldn't see it, the two masked kunoichi's eyebrows were raised with the redhead saying, how so, Naruto? And exactly what do you mean when involving the leaf? Stretching with a slight wince, he said, since the first and second Hokage died, the leaf has been power hungry, as they've done everything they could to bolster their strength, going as far as to disguise themselves as another village just to weaken their enemies to deal the final blow themselves. When I was a naive child, I found some damning evidence in the case of a little black book in the Hokage's office with his plans since when he was a mere genin, in hopes of making the Leaf Village reach the top of the ladder in Konoha and all others ing the heels of their sandals. Even as to have me be conditioned to become a mindless pawn and pariah, so I'll do whatever the village says, he said, unsealing said little black book with a gold leaf insignia etched on the front, which he promptly tossed up. As they read it, more came to light, the assisting Iwa, Kumo, and Kiri in the downfall of Uzu, the possible plans involving the Jinchuriki to be under the Leaf Village's sole control. The more they read, the more the killer intent flooded the base. He nodded, saying, you see what I mean about Konoha. Though since I've lived there for a few years, there are a few clans who would be willing to assist us due to some of the things the Hokage has done to them in the past. The woman with a Venus flytrap on her shoulders, whose skin was split between white and black, said, and what is it that they've done to them, Naruto-kun? Looking at her, he said, Whenever the village has a prosperous ninja, i.e. the clans, for example Azane who showed promise decided to either retire or do something that the Hokage council didn't agree with, they've done something they weren't too fond of. Grabbing the book he read a few examples. With the Inuzuka Sum-chan's husband Koga wanted to retire but he had the most skill in their clan's taijutsu and techniques, but the council weren't too fond of it and sent him on a suicide mission while claiming to Sum he ran into trouble, this trouble being the Konoha Anbu being at the location as both he and his partner were killed. Reading another he said, and another example being Hinata-chan's mother Hanako wanted to end the separation between branches but both the council and the Hyuga clan her husband included found this undesirable and poisoned her during childbirth hoping to mold their last daughter to their image. And another, and lastly Yugao Azuki's fiancé was a promising swordsman that if his health wasn't failing would have possibly been capable of giving the 7 swordsmen of the mist possible Orochi Tem a run for their Ryo. But that's the thing, even without Tsunade such a simple problem like a misfire on the poison mist jutsu causing the poison to last in the lungs would be simple for even a beginning medical ninja. Azane said seeing where this was going picked up, so to keep him under their thumb knowing that if he got better he would retire and married Yugao as would she too retire to raise a family. To prevent this they kept him ill. He nodded saying, "That's right," although Baki of Suna just made their job easier as he killed him when he listened in on the plan to invade Konoha with the assistance of Sound who is the main cause as a certain snake is spearheading this with Sasuke as his secondary focus. "What of my brother and how is he?" she asked as Naruto sighed. Azane, to be blunt, your brother is an arrogant, self-centered, power-hungry prick. Since the Uchiha massacre he's been treated as Kami's personal gift to the world. People give him personal training from various Junin. He feels everyone should bow to the might of the Uchiha and all others are beneath him. To be honest, Azane-chan, if he keeps his attitude I do intend to kill the fletchling, as I've read that once he reaches of age and awakens the Sharingan to the next level they'd make him the next Hokage and use his eyes to keep me in control and waging an all-out war with Konoha at the reins, he said seeing her frown before nodded reading the bit on using Sasuke to breed more complacent Uchiha to follow the Leaf Village's whims like some loyal lapdog. He turned his focus to the 2 masked women as they hopped down, now standing with him at their chest height. He said, "But one thing comes to mind, if your focus is to get the Jinchuriki, why mention all this to me? I mean, you could have extracted the 9 tails from me and do what you intend to since you already got the other 8, and why is it that the 2 of you are staring at me so intently?" The redhead said, "Why would you think we're staring at you?" He shrugged saying, "During this whole conversation you 2 have been staring at me rather closely, for what reason I don't know. But the 2 of you have been staring so intently I think I'm developing burns on where you've been looking." The 2 looked at each other when the redhead asked, "What do you know about your family relations and what exactly makes you an Uchiha and Senju?" Raising an eyebrow he said, "My Senju blood comes from my dad's side of the family as he is the great-grandson of Tobarama Senju and civilian woman named Kara Namikaze." "And your mother's side?" the dark-haired woman asked. "My Uchiha blood originates from my mother Kushina Uzumaki, who is the granddaughter of Kurogami Uchiha and Akazuki Uzumaki," he said before the dark-haired woman said, "She's my great-granddaughter to be correct, and yes, Kazuki was a loving man, you almost look like him," she said removing the mask showing the supposedly deceased Kurogami Uchiha with her M's active making him go wide-eyed as he looked at the redhead only for his heart to stop. Before him was a red-headed woman with a heart-shaped face with a Sharingan that had a red mosaic of a sun with a black lotus on the front with both on a black background. She hugged him saying, "I've missed you so much, Naruto-kun." Wide-eyed he said, "But I checked the place you were buried, how?" Kurogami said, "It helps when you know the blood clone to take a person's place. With her being weak from birth it would be impossible to defend herself and you from the village, and who knows what depraved things they would do to her, so when everyone had yet to get to you all I took her to heal and train her." He nodded as Kushina said, "Oh my baby boy, look at what they've done to you, taking away your beautiful red and black hair." Brushing her fingers across a seal on his scalp, she destroyed it, causing his hair to change, growing down to his lower back as it was spiky, with it having black streaks while the rest was predominantly red. Even the marks on his face were changed to being rectangular and black as his complexion changed slightly as his skin lightened to where his tan was barely noticeable. His Sharingan also forcibly activated as it bled, turning into red six-pointed shuriken, then grew a black three-pointed star as he shuddered. And that is the most uncomfortable thing I've ever experienced ever. But how did the seal affect my Sharingan? It only affects my appearance, he asked, getting a shrug from the two. Getting serious, Kurogami said. Now to tell you about why we're after not only you but the Biju as well. Now it is true we want the tailed beast, but it's to make a new Jubi which will be contained. He raised an eyebrow on his now stoic face, saying, but this includes me. How? I mean, I know I have the DNA of all three clans capable of containing a Biju, but what makes me so important that neither you, Mom, or even Azane could take the position? He raised a good point. Many of them thought as all three are from the same clan and both had an ability to control the tailed beast. You're the linchpin because you are the direct descendant of the sage himself. All you need to do is awaken that blood in you to increase those strengths, Kushina said, getting an understanding nod from him. Okay, I can see your point, but one thing, he said, getting a raised eyebrow. What is it, Naruto-kun? Kushina asked. What are the odds things could go wrong? I mean, you're taking a Biju that's been inside me since birth, practically saturating my chakra with Yukai to where it's nearly 80% Yukai, if not more so. What could stop me from? Oh, I don't know, he paused, thinking. Maybe going up like a pile of explosive notes, he shouted as his head grew to that of the Geto Mezu statue, making the women sweat drop. I guess Naruto-kun learned how to use Iruka's big head jutsu, Azane said, remembering Iruka, who was another one of his guards along with her, who took their job seriously as he made quite the impression on them as a child. With both of their hair blown back, wide-eyed, Kurogami said, there's nothing to worry about as we've spent years preparing for this. Just leave everything to us and we'll handle everything. He looked them both in the eye before relenting as he said, so what all do I have to do? The last thing he saw was of the two Uchiha before his world turned to black. Kurogami said, now let's get him into the statue. It's going to take the rest of the day and then we're going to train him. They nodded as they removed all things of use from him and tossed him in the statue as the last eye opened. Will he be okay? Kushina asked, getting a comforting pat on the shoulder from her fellow Uchiha. Oh, if he has your never say die attitude, then he'll be fine. But when he's stable enough, we're training him for the finals. I'm sure you'd love to see your son hand everyone their asses on a platter, right? She said, getting a grin as a response. That's my girl, Kurogami said with a small grin as she wrapped an arm around Kushina's shoulder before they went to perform the same series of hand signs as the eyes all started to glow white. Oh, hours later. I see passing out is going to be a normal occurrence just so long as I don't wake up with a hangover in another woman's bed. I still owe Anko-chan for that, he said, coming to with a hand to his head before he covered his ears due to the increase in noise. Can someone tone it down? He said as the noise died down. When he opened his eyes, the place was in shambles. The statue was destroyed from the head up with craters and scorch marks everywhere. When his eyes landed on them, he went wide-eyed as everyone was injured with a few claw wounds. What the happened here? He said, alarmed as they turned to him. Well, you see, when the process finished, there were a few unforeseen accidents, Kushina said with a sheepish grin before she shrank back at the glare. Yeah, I see the craters and the destroyed statue, but that doesn't answer why you all look like you just came back from war, he said, seeing them all shift uncomfortably. Anyone going to speak? You're starting to freak me out, and why does everything seem off? He said as Kushina said. You see, Naruto-kun, the process went without a hitch, except you didn't become the Jinchuriki for the 10 tails, she started, making him raise an eyebrow. If things went without a hitch but I didn't become the Jubi's Jinchuriki, what happened then? He thought before he felt something brush across the ground, making him turn around and see something black with red lines running across it as he grabbed it, only to flinch when he felt his hand touch the furry object. Reaching for it again, he felt his hand grip the object as he traced the object from where he was grabbing down to see it coming from his spine with 9 others next to it as his eyes widened. What the hell? He said, grabbing his sword that was stabbed into the ground next to Masamune. As he looked at his reflection, his eyes were like Mayu's, except the space between the rings were black, as the rings were a royal purple with red tomo equaling 9 total, and on top of his ears were 2 wolf ears. They turned when Kurogami said as they tried to catch the sound. As Kushina said, there was a bit of a hitch. You didn't become the Jinchuriki, but you became the Jubi thanks to a blunder on our side during the hand sign process. When some of us went for Inu, we used Tori. Focusing chakra from his eyes, the rings constricted, turning white as they glowed. He said, so I became the Jubi instead. I'm the descendant of the sage and the second 10 tails. This is fantastic. Seeing them give him worrying looks, he said, I'm fine. So what are we going to do now? I mean, I've got to prepare for the Chunin exams in 2 months starting tomorrow, as tomorrow is the start of the 2-month waiting period. Kurogami said, it's obvious you are still a genin even though you're already a high A rank low S rank shinobi, but with your new abilities it's going to take some time to grow accustomed to your new senses and skills, mostly the uses of your M's and these new eyes. Hisai said, so what are you going to call M? I mean, they're a mix of all 3 dujutsu with a hell of a boost, especially with your transformation. Seeing him tilt his head with his eyes closed made the girls find this to be rather cute as his ears flattened while his tail swayed back and forth. I'll call them the Tengoku no Mi, Heaven's Eye, he said, reactivating them as they changed back when he focused more and activated the M's, causing the symbols in his eyes to grow, with the shuriken being white with the star being black. A little arrogant, don't you think? Katsu asked, getting a raised eyebrow from him. Hey, it was the first thing to come to mind. You get any better ideas? He asked, getting a negative from them all, getting a smirk from him in exchange. Clapping her hands, Kurogami said, now that the naming is out of the way, we're going to work you into the ground, Naruto, so be prepared, because starting tomorrow we will personally introduce you to hell. All of them had a small sense of satisfaction seeing his face lose color slightly before telling them all to get some rest as to prepare for his training. Naruto was about to head to the room he was sleeping in when Kushina grabbed him by the shoulder and dragged him towards her room, getting odd looks from the others before Kurogami came to her great-granddaughter's defense. Hey, don't give her that look. Kushina's been denied 16 years of her son's life. 16 years she'll never get back, and besides, you know he is the last male of the Uchiha, Senju, Namikaze, and Uzumaki. If she wants to bear his children, it's her choice, she said, watching him walk with her. Hell, I've seen the way all of you ogled him. I may just join in if he'll have me. Maybe even Uzukage-sama will want a piece of him, she said with a grin, seeing the girl's color slightly before she vanished in a swirling vortex. Kishi looked at Mayu and said, so how big is he? Not even looking at her, she created a chakra rod and said, that big. Before they could pester her more, she walked away with her blue-haired companion as the others went to their rooms as well to plan out the new Jubi's training schedule. Oh, Kushina's room. Oh, this is so great, getting to hold my son again. I haven't done this since you were just a baby. Kushina exclaimed happily as the two of them were in her bed with her wearing a pair of loose sweatpants and a low-cut shirt as she held her son. He was blushing as he had his arms around her waist with his tails wrapped around her as well, but the reason he was blushing is because his mother was pressed up against him with her chest against his. I'm happy to have my mom around too, he said, looking down with his eyes glowing in the dark, which she was thankful for as her blush was intense, feeling his muscles. Oh my god. He's so toned in his chest. I just want to feel him against me like this in forever, but he's my son. Although I haven't done anything to be considered motherly to even register as a mother in his eyes, she thought sadly before feeling his breath on her, causing her to look up as he was unconscious. She brought her face closer to his till they were an inch apart before stopping. I can't. He's my son. Although Konoha did take away our chance to be a mother, he might not feel the same. You won't know unless you try, bitch. I guess one peck won't hurt. Of course not, and if he likes it, then he likes it. After all, when we revealed ourselves, his eyes didn't leave our body till we hugged him. Closing that final distance, her lips lightly connected to his own before she wrapped her arms around his neck with one leg coming over his until she felt something pull her closer as he deepened the kiss, making her eyes widen as she saw Naruto's eyes were now wide open. Separating, he said huskily, "Even though we can't be mother and son, I would be happy to be with you, Kushi-chan, but how about we get to know each other, huh?" With tears in her eyes, she nodded, kissing him repeatedly as she continued to tell him how much she loves him before resting her head on his chest with one of his arms being wrapped around her waist to bring her closer as the two fell into a blissful sleep. "Hello, my new notebook, it's Naruto here." The girls thought it would be a good idea to write stuff down, be it random thoughts to ideas and reminders, so I figured I'd give it the old Uzumaki try and see where this goes. Over the time of my transformation and joining of the Akatsuki, I got to know the girls and my great-grandmother and mother. To be honest, they're all amazing women with quite some backstory, as they all put me through the ringer while training. But it wasn't all that bad, especially when they caught me playing some music which they insisted I do more often, as they fell in love with my voice, which was rather embarrassing. During the first month, the girls said I was already high at a low S in skill, but with my training, as I was already skilled in Kenjutsu and Taijutsu, but now from Kushi-chan and Kurogami Haim they said I could now throw S-ranked jutsu around like they're going out of style. Mayu-chan started to train me in the Rinnegan's abilities and the ability to animate bodies to use as they would have use of one of the paths, as she demonstrated when she had me attack with a jutsu and had one absorb it. Hisai-chan took to teaching me how to use a scythe, which I learned rather easily and made a blade that turned into a scythe. Katsu-chan even took to teaching me old jutsu that haven't been seen since the Third War. Kishi-chan took to training me further in Kenjutsu and water and wind jutsu, which were common in the Mist Village. Konan-chan, a blue-haired beauty, taught me to be calm in combat and use my opponent's anger against them, as she said, "An angered opponent is an easy opponent." And that was the truth. If you could get under your opponent's skin or bring them down, the battle would sooner turn in your favor. Kushi Haim, being the Uzumaki she was, trained me in Fuinjutsu and the use of the Uzumaki Kenjutsu and Taijutsu style, and even went as far as to have me sign both the cousin contract to her Hydra summons but also Dad's clan summons as well, although with me having the sage's fabled Rinnegan I could always sign more. At least that's what Mayu Haim told me. After he started learning from them, he had some clones stay behind to train in their arts and senjutsu from the clones' memories. During the second month, I'm going to have my work cut out for me. She even went to train me in our Uzumaki special chakra and use of the chakra chains. That was a pain in the to learn, but it's useful to use when restraining an enemy and draining them of chakra. Yuri-chan trained me in stealth and poisons, which admittedly I was fairly good in. I mean, I am by no means a professional, but adept enough to make some pretty effective poisons and neurotoxins. Azane-chan and Kurogami-chan trained me in the abilities of the Sharingan and the use of Kaden Jutsu as well as the Uchiha Taijutsu style. Sumiko Haim trained me in the use of puppetry, which while it's something I doesn't use as it doesn't seem to fit my style, it got me thinking of different ways to use a puppet. I wonder if that would work anyways. And lastly, Deidria-chan trained me in tactics. While getting under your opponent's skin was a good thing, it wouldn't do you any good if they had the advantage, because your opponent knows the landscape and every vantage point that came with it. She had a saying, "Keep your opponent on edge and keep them unaware." You do that and keep them moving, so you're getting them to where you want them to be. Of course, I didn't just train in the basic stuff, but I made my own form of technique. It is with the use of the creation of all things I could make blades out of my chakra and spiritual energy that I called soul blades. I still had a few kinks to work out before they could be considered combat ready, so I decided to practice it as much as he could so they could see combat and have shadow clones work on that while I was training with the others. And lastly, I also trained Dad's Hiraishin to the point neither the kunai nor the marker were necessary, and used my Ryutsu to make a variation of that called the Shunpo or flash step. And made techniques that required no chakra or hand signs he likes to call Kido. It seems have been coming up with some interesting ideas, and since its spiritual energy, which when focused with killer intent, it is rather impressive effect and intimidation tactic, as Kushi told me that it feels like the Shinigami was gripping at her heart and made it difficult to breathe. Apparently when I use it, the force that hits them practically brings them to their knees. Some of them say I could kill them just from enough pressure alone. I decided to call this spiritual pressure, since unlike killer intent that affects the mind, spiritual pressure hits the soul. Another thing I am immensely grateful for is the fact that they got me clothes that don't make me look like a walking neon sign. I was so grateful that I gave all of them a deep kiss, which I think they were rather grateful for as well. Yeah, this fox still got it, although I may need to place some anti-intruder seals just in case to my door, looking towards my bedroom door in worry, seeing a couple pairs of eyes peek through a crack in the door. Those girls while S-rank kunoichi that could wipe out a village with no problem made me realize they are still women deep down when they crawl in my bed at night, sometimes 2 or 3 at a time, not that I mind really. Although the girls seem to be far too comfortable with themselves, because when they join me in my bed some of them are either chose their underwear or nothing at all. It gets awkward when they somehow pull me into their chests. Never in my life, save for Anko and the girls back home, did I have a harder time controlling my hormones than this. Well, it seems I gotta go journal. My break for the morning is over, so I'll see you either tomorrow or the day after for another update. Yane. 002-month entry log 00. Sai, hey, my notebook of thoughts and ideas, your 10-tailed friend Naruto here. Man, when Kushi-chan said senjutsu training was a pain, she wasn't lying. The Leviathans are amazing, especially Suiren, water lilies, the daughter of the boss of the Leviathan contract, and Tigress, daughter of the boss of the Tiger contract. Those two were the first I ever summoned from those respective contracts. The Leviathans were a rather aggressive summons, even their taijutsu style is something to be afraid of, but their jutsu and kenjutsu were frightening to say the least. The White Tiger clan is a frightening sort with their taijutsu and bojutsu from what I've seen, while their ninjutsu were a close second comparatively. But both of their senjutsu training was by far the most difficult but uplifting. The natural energy makes me feel tranquil, like I'm finally at peace and had nothing to worry about. Both of the clans were happy that I became their summoner for a twofold reason. One being they haven't been summoned in generations. And the second being the Toads have been gloating about soon having me become their summoner or some such nonsense, being their child of prophecy. Yeah, right. Another thing I've come to see is that both daughters have some affection towards me, which their parents obviously noticed. You ever be given the "you hurt my daughter" speech from a creature 100 times your size and weight? It's scary, as especially when compared to me, I'm the size of their fangs and claws. That does not instill confidence, and I'm 6'4", so you can see where I'm going with this. But when I brought up the fact they're animals, their mothers, the bosses told me all summons are the competent ones, know how to form a human form, which they are even capable of bearing children. And all I can say about Suiren and Tigress is, to sum it up in a few words, hot damn. The two of them chose to become my familiars and were trained even further by their mothers to fight alongside me. And if they weren't training with their moms, they were training with me. And if we weren't training, we were eating together. And if we weren't eating, we were bathing or sleeping together. I have to admit, for their animal forms, they were rather tall. Suiren was about a half of her mother's massive size, while Tigress came to about a little past her mother's stomach when she stood up. But they could shrink, so when we traveled, they stayed on my shoulders or on a large scroll I keep on my back. The time it took to master both of their training was something, while intimidating for some, was a learning experience for me. Even their clans came to see me as family and to acknowledge my ascension to sage. I was gifted with a coat similar to my father's, except it was made from Leviathan scales, with it being black with sharp gray flames, and a sword made from Suiren's mother's claw she had dubbed Soonga L long katana, with a purple jewel at the end of the hilt. And from the tigers I was given a bladed lance made from Tigress's mother's fangs, as the blades at both ends retracted, while I kept it secured in a holster on the small of my back. I may keep all my weapons held by storage seals on my person, I'll think on it. Anyways, both the girls get along rather well too. I guess it's because like my girls back home they agreed to share me, or it's because they're predators. We also trained in combination techniques since Tigress had a wind and fire affinity, while Suiren had a lightning and water affinity. It's safe to say that's also a side project since we're still not quite in sync in performing jutsu that meshes three techniques together, especially with the fact I can use every affinity. Oh well, since their moms bonded them to me, their own chakra reserves have grown rather well. I mean, they were already pushing Junin in reserves, but now they had enough to compare to a tailed beast in the amount they had. Another thing, the two of them are very clingy and territorial when it comes to me. A few of the female summons tried coming on to me and that resulted in getting attacked. Hee hee, oh man, that was an admittedly funny sight. On a serious note, their mothers told me that when the toads find out about me being their summoner there may be conflict. Although I have doubts about the toads winning against them since they are stronger than the toads and snakes in terms of power. At this very moment Suiren and Tigress are waiting for me to join them in bed. And apparently the girls back home were messaged by the bosses telling them about the relationship situation and they don't mind, in fact they're happy. So better finish this up and get some sleep. I gotta leave bright and early tomorrow so I can make it on time for the Chunin exams. So till next time, oh journal. Ya nay. When is he getting back? He has to be at the stadium in a couple hours, Hisei said, getting a series of shrugs from the others when a poof of smoke caused them to look and see Naruto. He had grown to an impressive 6 feet 4 with his hair done in a braided ponytail reaching his lower back with his bangs coming down his now fat-free face with some of it coming over his eyes nearly blocking them from view as he gained aristocratic features with a feminine quality as his eyes were now white without his usual black sclera which was concealed by a genjutsu. He wore a pair of black Anbu-style pants with black tape that was wrapped around his feet in a gray muscle shirt with a sleeveless purplish, black high-collar zip-up kimono top with a deep red rope-styled belt done around his waist holding the sheaths of his tensa zanjetsu and masamune on his left hip in a special sheath that held the entire blade thanks to a seal he created. Along his legs were several pouches full of kunai and shuriken with another set of pockets holding different tags. On his right hip was a large sword that had a purple jewel in the hilt of the sword showing his mastery of the Leviathan contract with a serpent-style tattoo flowing on his right arm. On his left hand was a seal holding his guy-bold-bladed spear with his black trench coat with silvery white flames that resembled scales with a large scroll on his back that was gray with a white tribal design of a tiger and Leviathan on his back. On the scroll was an orange tiger the size of an adolescent tiger with brownish-yellow eyes holding a strong gaze and a blue-gray Leviathan with gold eyes and a third eye on her forehead resting on the other end that coiled itself around the scroll, while on his left arm was a seal holding his special sword-scythe combination weapon. Grinning he said, "Sup ladies, you miss me?" They all smiled before each of them gave Naruto a kiss when Kurogami said, "Welcome home Naruto-kun, before you left I wanted to give you this." Pulling out a large black gunbai with 2 sets of 6 white rings on both sides with a seal that connected to his chakra allowing him to create a rope. Handing it to him he said, which he promptly sealed away in a scroll in his pouch, "This is amazing Kurogami Heim, thank you." She grinned before getting serious, "That's good to hear Naruto-kun, since I made it from the same materials used for mine. Now I wanted to give you some limitations." He nodded as Tigress shrank before jumping to his shoulder as Kurogami said, "First you are limited to only the Sharingan and the Rinnegan. The Byakugan and the combination of all three are forbidden, although the Rinnegan gives the same abilities of the Byakugan, so that's partially why I'm forbidding you from using it. Nobody knows about your heritage, not even the Hokage. So if they call you into the chambers and ask, just say since you were born an orphan, nobody knows who you got it from." He agreed, relenting to that as she continued, "Next you're limited to the Mangekyo aspect of the Sharingan. And lastly you cannot use your new experimental technique unless it's absolutely necessary, but Sage Mode is forbidden for the time being. Everything else is permitted. Yes, the Rasengan and Hiraishin included. Whatever excuse you use for it is fine, since the Rasengan is a simple chakra control exercise and the Hiraishin is a take on Fuinjutsu. Again he nodded before he was kissed on the forehead as he was given an uzu headband with a black cloth that he wore around his neck out of view under his high collar, as it was also hidden by a well-placed genjutsu, while his leaf headband that had a scratch across it that was concealed with an illusionary seal, making it seem normal. Before he left he said, "Quick question, how did you all get the biju for this in the first place? I mean, the villages had to have noticed something if the Jinchuriki went missing." Kushina said, "We just went to the biju's resting places before they were sealed and grabbed something that came from them that contained all of their energy, like a fang or claw or scale. Everything contains a soul, even if it's a fragment, which over time would cause those fragments to gain their own consciousness." He nodded, saying, "Thanks, well, wish me luck, girls, I've got a tournament to win." Flashing out of the cave, Hisei said, "He's going to slaughter them, isn't he?" The others nodded when Yurei created a giant screen, making them all turn to her, making both halves shrug. "We thought everyone would like to see Naruto-kun fight in the finals, so we created several clones to act as eyes and ears in the village to show us everything." They nodded, watching him appear at the outside of the arena as he made his way inside. Konoha Chunin Exam Stadium. Will Naruto Uzumaki and Neji Hyuga please come to the center of the stadium? I repeat, will Naruto Uzumaki and Neji Hyuga please come to the center of the arena? Genma shouted as Neji stood in the center with a smug face. It seems Uzumaki has failed to arrive, so Neji, he started after announcing the match when he heard, and I wasn't even given a 10-second warning. Makes me wonder if the Uchiha would have been given a whole 4 rounds to get here if it were him." They all heard, making them turn to see Naruto standing next to Neji with a blank expression, making the women in the arena blush, while Neji and Genma jumped as he just appeared out of nowhere. "Name?" he asked, making Naruto give the same blank expression, making chills go down his spine as he was given predatory glances from the tiger and Leviathan next to him. "Come now, Gemna-san, what other 16-year-old leaf genin has whisker marks on their face?" he said blandly, making him nod before looking at the Hokage, who nodded. "Then the first round of the Chunin exams will now commence between Naruto Uzumaki and Neji Hyuga. Fight!" he announced as he shunshined away. The two squared off as Naruto took off his coat as he had Tigress and Suiran go to the side of the stadium with his scroll. "A change of appearance makes no difference. You may as well submit now. You are destined to fall at the might of the Hyuga as the failure you are," Neji said arrogantly, watching Naruto crack his neck, getting loud sickening pops before he vanished from everyone's sight when Neji got launched into the wall. Wide-eyed, everyone turned to see Naruto with his hands clawed like his feet as his hands were smoking with his palms extended. He said, "Please Neji, if all you're going to do is flap your gums, then give up now and not waste my time. It makes me wonder if that's the only thing your clan is good for anyways, really." Getting up, Neji charged with his Byakugan active as he tried to hit Naruto's Tenketsu. As Naruto slapped away each attacker danced around him, continuing to get under his skin even more. "I'm waiting for you to make a blow, Hyuga. I would have believed a prodigy would be better than this, but I guess they would give even a brain-dead fish the title these days, really," Naruto said with his eyes closed, continuing to dance around each strike when one landed, making him smirk before it fell when Naruto went up in an explosion, pushing him back with his clothes singed. "I would have thought the almighty Hyuga's clan had no blind spots. Either you're posturing these things, or are you all just that sad to fall for a simple Bunshin Debuku, a great clone explosion? This truly isn't as fun as I was expecting it to be," Naruto said disappointingly, while inside he was satisfied to see Neji's face turn red with fury. "Shut up!" he exclaimed as he blindly charged at Naruto as he didn't notice the growing grin. Akatsuki base Naruto-kun sure knows how to get under someone's skin. I've never seen a Hyuga's face get so red, Katsu said as the others agreed with her when Naruto delivered a clawed hand across Neji's chest. Chunin exam stands. Sensei, what style is Naruto using? Tenten asked as Guy said, watching Naruto move. "That style is one that helped give birth to the Iron Fist and even the Inuzuka's taijutsu. The Tiger style," he said, getting everyone watching's attention. "What? Kiba exclaimed, watching Naruto not take a single blow while Neji was continuously beaten around like a rag doll. That's right. The tiger style was an old-style taijutsu that hasn't been seen since the sage's reign. Channeling the primal fury of the tiger, one can deliver devastating blows and graceful evasion. In fact, the tiger style was the first of the styles to exist and feared as a single strike, while his hand as the way it is could cleanly tear out your throat, he explained, making everyone go wide-eyed learning the Dobi knew such a style. But wait, that still doesn't explain how he has such skill or his change in appearance, and what's with those animals that are just sitting there, Ino said as they turned from the fight, which was obviously one-sided, to see the tiger resting on the scroll and coat with the Leviathan coiled up. They could be summons. Where he got them from we may never know, and as for the transformation, he could have awoken some form of bloodline. As for the rise in skills, it could be that he had skills to begin with but chose to keep them hidden for such a moment like now, Asuma said, watching Naruto laid Neji on his back for the 100th time. Oh, back on the floor. Oh, I have to say you're rather pathetic, Neji. What happened to that Hyuga greatness you would go on about? I mean, earlier you said I would be at your feet, but it seems the sandal is on the other foot, huh? Why don't you save yourself any more embarrassment, or you can continue while I tear another couple pounds of flesh from you for hurting Hinata Haim, Naruto suggested, getting a snarl. And what's so special about that failure? She's weak, she couldn't even protect herself against from a Kumo ninja. He exclaimed when he was kicked across the face when Naruto planted his foot on his chest, slowly cutting off his oxygen. Yes, and here's the standing question. How is it a 3-year-old's fault for being unable to defend herself against a 20-something Junin with combat experience in spades? How is it her fault, Neji? Or better yet, let me bring up my own questions and we'll see if you can answer those, okay? He asked, not noticing Neji was starting to lose consciousness. How is it possible that a clan of 100 clansmen minimum with eyes that could see through walls were incapable of noticing her kidnapping until he was nearly in Lightning Country? I mean, someone had to have noticed something, unless your clan is as blind as you are ignorant, because I find it highly unlikely that your entire clan were incapable of noticing anything until the last minute, he said as he sighed before Naruto kicked him across the ground by his head, making Naruto drop his head in disappointment. It seems Neji can't continue anymore. You going to call the match? He said, looking at Genma, who was slightly intimidated by the cold look in those silvery white eyes, before nodding. Why, yeah, winner of the first rounds of the Chunin finals, Naruto Uzumaki. He announced as everyone booed while the daimyo and visiting dignitaries frowned, hearing the slurs and insults as everyone started to call him demon, especially the water daimyo and fire daimyo, who heard about his exploits in Wave. The water daimyo said, "This is quite shameful to have a village treat a young ninja with such discontent, isn't it, Manase?" The fire daimyo nodded with a sigh. Yes, and you wouldn't believe the shameful actions I've heard about in a little book a plant woman gave me about the happenings here. After one thing, I've already made my decision, at least when I settle something after the exams, when Sarutobi and I have a chat. The water daimyo nodded as she said, "I would like to sit on this meeting if that's fine. The boy shares a strong resemblance to an old friend of mine. And if they are treating him worse than what we see on the surface, I may just ask you to move him to a recently rebuilt village." He nodded, watching Naruto walk back up the stairs with his coat and summons on him as they made their way to the contestants' booth, when the fire daimyo said to his side, "Kai, I need you to keep a close eye on the black and red-haired boy, but stay hidden. This village is acting strange and I want to understand why such a promising boy is treated so poorly." The black masked ninja nodded after dropping to the ground before vanishing as he said again, "And Zane, stay near Sarutobi. What that boy said about special treatment makes me cautious. If he does attempt to give the Uchiha special treatment, then tell him I will take away 30% of their funding for such conduct." A blue-haired male nodded before vanishing as the man sighed as the water daimyo chuckled softly, "A daimyo's work is never done, huh, old friend? They never are, they never are," he said as the woman next to him gave a barely traceable smile before watching the next fight between Shikamaru and Tamari, resulting in the Naruto forfeit at the last minute. 00 Cage Booth 00. Lord Hokage Sasuke Uchiha and Kakashi Hatake has yet to return. What should we do? A random Junin said when Sarutobi was about to speak. They heard. Then he should be disqualified. If he can't be on time for a fight, then he isn't mature enough to advance through the ranks. Turning, they saw the same blue-haired shinobi as Sarutobi glared. Who are you to tell me what to do with my ninja? Sarutobi demanded when he showed his Fire Country insignia, the same insignia his son wears. Personal guard to the daimyo Zane Arasawa SS-ranked ninja of Kusa. He saw young Uzumaki about to be disqualified even though the rules state he has to be given a window to appear on time. Your ninja disregarded this and almost deemed he forfeited his place if the boy didn't come the moment he got there, he said, making both the cage tense. And Lord Menace said if you give this Sasuke boy special treatment then the village will lose 30% of his funding for favoritism, he explained blandly as he stared the aged cage down before he relented as Zane turned to the floor. So tell Genma that the Uchiha has forfeited his place and get on to the next match, he said impatiently to the unnamed Junin, who nodded before joining Genma down below as they announced the results, with the crowd booing as Sarutobi growled silently much like the cage. 00 Contestants Booth 00. You know, I can't help but wonder what a masked ninja that isn't Anbu doing here, Naruto said silently while scratching Tigress's ear as she turned into putty as she draped herself across his lap purring. He heard next to him softly, Lord Menace wanted me to keep an eye on you and learn of your life here in the village as he grew curious due to the actions of the populace here and how they acted when you won. Naruto nodded, handing him a slip of paper when he heard his name being called after Shino's opponent forfeited. He said, go to the hospital and go into the document room. I have my own storage there. It holds all my info if your daimyo is curious, although you may want to stay near the Hokage for the time being. I get a funny feeling coming from the cage and it isn't the warm and fuzzy kind. Patting Tigress on the head, she got up as she hopped on his shoulder as he sealed away the scroll before they vanished in a burst of sound, missing the chuckle. Kid's got style, I'll give him that much. 00 Stadium Grounds 00. The next match will now commence between Naruto Uzumaki and Subaku no Gaara. Genma started when a large wind kicked up as leaves swirled around when it started to clear. 00 Akatsuki Base 00. Hey Zane, isn't that your brother? Kishi asked, getting a groan from the elder sibling who watched as her brother emerged back to back with Kakashi wearing a pair of Anbu-styled pants with calf-high sandals, wearing a white kimono top with opera-style fingerless gloves with a purple rope-styled belt, holding a chikudo as he stood there smug. Oh dear Kami, please don't remind me, she groaned, getting a snigger from her partner while Kuragami shook her head in her hand. I think he decided to come at the wrong time because Naruto-kun and Gaara aren't too pleased, Mayu said, watching the screen when they all looked to see Naruto's eyebrow twitch while the rest of his features remained bland. Gaara, on the other hand, had a dangerous glare aimed at Kakashi and Sasuke as Kakashi was looking at his smut as Hisei commented, I'm rather interested in watching those two crash and burn. They nodded before returning their focus to the screen. 00 Stadium Grounds 00. Are we late? Kakashi asked when Genma nodded, pointing to Naruto, who had an equally bored expression as Gaara had. Yes, actually, Lord Hokage was told to disqualify the Uchiha because he couldn't bring himself to be on time for his match. In fact, your appearance is interrupting your last student's match, Genma said as Kakashi said. Naruto? He asked, watching Naruto slowly turn his focus to the Junin before Naruto groaned audibly before nodding. You wouldn't mind giving your spot to Sasuke, would you? He asked, getting a snort from Naruto. I would mind actually. If you weren't such a useless case and didn't let your porn or the fledgling's ego blind you too, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. So yes sensei, I do mind, since after all Sasuke and Sakura are the only reason I'm here, since the exams require a team of 3, you remember those words, don't you sensei? Naruto asked with a slight smile before he was gripped firmly on the shoulder by Kakashi, making Naruto look on with a bored expression. I didn't say it as a request, Genin, it was a demand. Now leave the field, he said when he felt something grip his throat to see Naruto's white eyes narrow into slits. Or we do it this way, Hatake. Since you just embarrassed the village in front of visiting dignitaries and daimyos who formed treaties with us and gave them the impression that such actions as yours are allowed, he started making Kakashi go wide-eyed, seeing Naruto's eyes turn red with 3 tomo. You get your second genin and join your only remaining student and sit down and shut up or I'll rip your throat out with my bare hand. The choice is yours, Naruto suggested, making him shiver from the killer intent before grabbing Sasuke and left the field. Oh Akatsuki base oh. Alright Naruto-kun, that's telling him, TT Ebane. Kushina said, jumping up and down as the other's sweat dropped watching her reaction. Your family is one odd bunch, Zane, Katsu said sympathetically, getting nods from the others while Zane groaned audibly. Don't start, she said with a snort, looking at Stitch Job Kunoichi as the others sniggered. Stadium grounds Now that that's out of the way we can begin, so just fight already, Genma announced as he left the field as Naruto dodged a spike of sand. He not wasting any time, ya? Fine, I was hoping for a real challenge, Naruto said as his Sharingan spun in excitement while Gaara grinned. Girls, let's have some fun, shall we? Naruto said, looking at Tigress and Suiren, who nodded when another spike came at them when a large puff of smoke came blocking everyone's view. Arena stands What's going on, sensei? Choji asked, getting a shrug from the bearded Junin. I don't know, Choji, but I'm more so interested in how he got this good. I mean, from what I heard from Haruno, who bragged about their sensei shooting down Naruto, saying that the two of them were just stepping stones for Sasuke to get to the finals. If he didn't have a person to train him, how did he get this good? He asked when out of the smoke came Naruto with 2 women. The first had brick brown hair as it was done short with her bangs framing her face, with 2 ribbons were done in her hair that made them seem like ears as they held 2 braids that hid behind the bangs. She stood slightly shorter than Naruto with tiger stripes on her body, with 2 on both shoulders and 2 as they came around her brownish yellow eyes with 2 dots over those. She wore a sleeveless red karate top with black lining and a black and gold bamboo tree lining with black gloves and steel knuckles that had spikes on them. She also wore gray shinobi pants with a beige belt wrapped around her waist like the bindings wrapped around her legs, with bandages done around her feet like Naruto's. The second stood slightly taller than Naruto with her steel gray hair done in a high ponytail that reached the middle of her back. While the other woman held a brutal elegance, this one had a natural beauty as she had light makeup on with black lipstick and soft gray eye shadow around her gold eyes. She wore a sleeveless silver and blue styled Chinese style dress with a pair of gray tight pants with black slippers and a matching top underneath the dress, as both were carrying a nodashi. While those 2 are cute, Choji said, getting nods from the men and the women admittedly as they watched the 3 brandish their weapons. Stadium floor Girls, I think it's time we got serious, huh? Naruto said as they nodded, with Naruto taking off his jacket as it created a large crater before the 3 vanished when a wall surrounded Gaara, blocking Naruto and the others from landing an attack before they vanished again as wall after wall came up with every attempted attack. Reappearing, the 3 Rakan verged at the wall as Naruto looked to the others before nodding as he charged down the wall when 2 larger tendrils of sand came at Naruto, which he maneuvered under as he gave a straight punch as his fist connected to the wall as more spikes formed in the wall when Naruto vanished, appearing behind him as he kicked Gaara in the back of the head, launching him from where he was standing as Tigress gave him another blow, kicking him into the air. Suiren, who appeared above him, kicked him in the chest, pushing him down, with Tigress giving a double palm thrust on his descent when Naruto and the others fired a series of collaborative jutsu comprising of wind, fire and lightning, causing him to be caught in the center of a large inferno. Stands Damn, whoever trained the kid sure did get him up to snuff. I mean, he was moving at Junin level speeds there. And those jutsu he used haven't been seen since the last war. It's safe to say, Kakashi, you threw away a gem because this kid has some serious skill. I mean, he obliterated last year's Genin of the Year in Taijutsu alone with the use of a single clone, and now this. If I had to rank him, he's at least an A- rank, Asuma said, with the other Junin agreeing with him while Sakura snorted. Please, he's a weak clan-less nobody and that's how he will stay, she said when Ino said. If that's the case then why aren't you down there then, Sakura? I mean, you make it seem you're stronger than him with your sensei's training, so surely you should be down there instead of him, right? Tenten asked, making the pink kid hesitate. Oh right, your sensei never trained you in anything while letting you and your team enter a dangerous field where the possibility of dying was outrageously high for the unprepared, and yet the clan-less nobody is fighting while you're up here with those who couldn't make the cut, she continued, watching the pink kid put her head down. She snorted, saying, thought so, as everyone noticed Kakashi and Sasuke had their Sharingan active in an attempt to copy his techniques. Oh, arena floor, oh. That had to do some lasting damage, right? Naruto asked as both Tigress and Suiran shrugged when they saw him stand up from where he landed as flakes of sand chipped off him, causing Naruto's eye to twitch. Right, sand armor. Forgot about that nifty little annoyance. I guess we're just going to have to hit harder then, won't we? Naruto said, feeling a little put off by Gaara's deranged grin. Feeling the ground rumble beneath them, they jumped when Naruto was the only one to be caught in a large dome made of sand that slowly started to compress. Suna. Hanten Kushizashi, sand style. Inverted impalement, Gaara announced when the dome had large spikes come out from the outside as they started to collapse in, while Suiran and Tigress attempted to break down the others. Oh, in the stands, oh. Hey, the Dobi should have just listened to his betters and let me fight, Sasuke said as steam started coming from the dome. I wouldn't start bragging just yet, boy, they heard, making them turn to see a black-haired youth wearing a mask with the Fire Country insignia on his vest. Shocked, Asuma said, Kai. What are you doing here? Turning his head he shrugged. Lord Daimyo seems to be rather interested in young Uzumaki, and I have to agree with your assessment earlier, Asuma. And as for your comment, boy, I wouldn't be so smug because you would have been in worse situations. Now I suggest you watch and see what a real warrior is. Pointing to the dome, they all saw it start to expand before it exploded by a large column of black fire before it died down, showing a Naruto who will forever be ingrained in their memories. His hair was disheveled as it spiked out with a bang, coming over his eye, while his visual pupil had shrank to a pinprick as his fangs extended past his lower lip, with tiger strips forming around his eyes just like Tigress, while his Sharingan changed to a red six-bladed shuriken. Both of his shirts were slowly deteriorating from the black flames encasing his arms, while his pant legs were destroyed up to the shin due to the same fire. You see, that Dobi, as you all label him, has the potential of being a great leader who won't fall to his foe. That look of determination in his eyes is proof. I may just make a suggestion to Lord Menace to offer the boy a position of the 12 Guardian Ninjas since you quit Asuma, he said, leaning against the railing. Sensei, do you know him? Ino asked, getting a nod from Asuma. Yes, Ino, this is Kai Shen, SS ranked ninja from Taki. In the 12 Guardian Ninja we have a ranking system, and with our rank he's number 2 while I was number 8. Honestly, Kai and Zane, who's ranked number 1, could easily handle an entire village of ninja on their own. I could be considered a high A rank capable of defeating at least a low S rank on my own, he said, getting wide eyes from everyone else. Nodding, Asuma said, so I take it Zane is the reason the brat didn't get to fight. Nodding his head he said distastefully while looking at the Hokage, yes, after hearing the comment Naruto made and seeing as Genma was going to disqualify the boy before he could be given a second call, Lord Menace figured to have a tight leash on things and gave everyone their fair shot to fight. The boy here didn't because he and his sensei figured he was above the rules. Ignoring Sakura and the rest of Team 7's glare, he turned to the floor saying, now watch, boy, you just might see what a real ninja is. Oh, arena floor, oh. Naruto-kun, are you okay? Tigress and Suiran asked as Naruto slowly tilted his head towards her with his Mangekyo spinning hypnotically when he extinguished a flame on his arm, showing he had scales coating them as he massaged her cheek with a slight smile. I'm fine, girls, although I'm not too keen on losing my shirt and pants, he said as they sighed in relief. Now how about we finish this fight quickly? I just want to rest, but if Yuri is right, and with her info she is then we're going to have some trouble on our hands, he said, ripping off the remains of his shirts leaving his chest bare. They nodded as Tigress got in the same stance as Naruto as her hands and feet were encased in blue fire while Suiran pulled water from the air as it swirled around her. You two ready? He asked, getting another series of nods from them as Naruto charged forward leaving a trail of black fire following him while Suiran and Tigress destroyed every tendril that came Naruto's way as he got in close using the heat to turn the sand into glass. Getting in close he formed a seal on his unlit hand as 5 flames formed on each finger before he slammed it into Gaara's abdomen, Gogyo Fuin, 5-element seal. As Naruto thought the moment the fight was over a barrage of feathers began to fall from the sky as Naruto, Suiran and Tigress focused their chakra and dispelled it. He said, Tigress, Suiran, I want you two to summon your clan's strongest to deal with the enemies in the village and to have them get the civilians to the bunker while the others defend the academy and the hospital. Try to get as little casualties on our side. They nodded before dashing off. He saw the same black masked ninja from before say, Kid, the village is under attack. Do you think you can handle things here? He nodded, grabbing his Soonga and Tensa Zanjetsu saying, Give me a mission, I'll complete it. I'm going to take a guess and say you're going to assist the Hokage. He nodded as Naruto reached into his back pouch giving him a seal saying, Here then, you're going to need this. It allows you to displace a Kekai Fuin for a moment, allowing you to enter with ease for a short time. I'll get Lord Menace and Lady Mai to a nearby bunker. He nodded before grabbing the seal and ran to the cage booth while Naruto created an army of shadow clones to spread out around the village. When Kakashi and the other ninja appeared, Naruto, what's going on and what did you give that man? It appears my hunch about Orochimaru was right on. He's impersonated the cage in an attempt to kill the Hokage. I gave that man a seal I developed that will allow him to enter that barrier to assist the Hokage. For now, let's not split hairs. We got an invading army on our hands and we got to defend the village, Naruto said as he started to go to the booth holding the daimyo when he felt Kakashi grip his shoulder. Now wait just a minute here, you're going to tell me what's going on, Genin, and you will show proper respect, Kakashi said when he was kicked in the side of his head, feeling Naruto's footstep on his chest as they all saw the air get thick with pressure that was rolling off Naruto. Everyone froze when they saw the look in his eye while Kakashi was especially petrified as Naruto said, Firstly, Hatake, if you would get your head out of you'd see that civilians are in danger. I would think your sensei taught you to deal with the important matters. Secondly, I don't have to explain shit to you since you've done nothing to make me consider it. Hell, you're struggling to breathe as is just from my spiritual pressure as is. Hee hee, Foxy-chan's funny. Kenny, is this Ni-chan strong enough? Everyone heard as they all looked around for everyone to be shocked as to a child who couldn't possibly be any older than 6 to 7 years old at the least. She had pink hair that was flat with a crossbone hair clip in her hair and dark pink eyes and a blush on her cheeks. She wore black pants with tape around her ankles and a deep red kimono top as she sat on his shoulder. Surprised at the fact a child got the jump on him, he was on edge, saying kindly, Well, sweetie, what are you doing here? It's dangerous. Should I get you to the bunker? She smiling. A large shadow started to cast over them all as they heard, Yeah, this is the kid. The kid who has the eyes of someone who's experienced the darkness of the world but is willing to fight for his beliefs, kid behind you. Slowly he turned to come face to face with a large man's chest, making him look up as his eyes slowly widened. The man easily towered over him as he came to a staggering 6 feet 7 as he wore a pair of black hakama and an kimono top with a tattered white haori. His black stringer hair with a long scar over his green right eye as he had an eye patch over his left. On his shoulder he carried what little remains of the katana he had as it was chipped and jagged with a gold guard that extended inward from its center. Wide-eyed looked from the little girl who was smiling at him to the imposing giant staring at him as the gears clicked in place. He said, No way, what's Kenpachi Zaraki and Yakiru Kusagenshi doing here? You know these people, Naruto-kun? Hinata asked, getting a nod from the boy as his eyes never left the giant. No, not personally, but more so from their reputations in the bingo book as 2S class Ronin. Although Yakiru-chan is possibly S-rank due to her connection to him or the fact she's killed several men just from her killer intent alone that got her the flee on-site order, he said as everyone stared at the 6-year-old child sitting on Naruto's head patting him on the head with a smile with wide eyes. But I'm curious as to why two well-known swordsmen are doing here in Konoha when you're normally known to stay in your territory in Tetsu no Kuni, Naruto said watching the man grin before pointing his sword at him. I saw the fire in your eyes during that fight. I want to fight you a fight to the death, he said with his grin still ever present while Yakiru nodded enthusiastically now on Hinata's shoulder. Wait, why do you want to fight the Dobi when you can fight an elite? Sasuke said with Sakura nodding while the others groaned audibly when Kenpachi cast him an side glance making the boy step back. Why would I fight a child who can't even stand in my presence? Kenpachi said watching the boy struggle to breathe making the others snort. I'd like that chance, but can we do it once we deal with the threat at the moment? We got to get the daimyos to safety and take out the other enemy ninja. Speaking of Kankuro, Tamari, he said when both Suna Genin came down with their sensei. What did you do to Gaara? Tamari demanded checking over her brother. I placed a 5-element seal on him. It seems whoever placed the last seal made him mentally unstable, so I was going to fix it after the exams seeing as the seal was making it impossible to sleep, he said getting raised eyebrows from the two swordsmen. Can you talk ninja later and speak in a way for the ninja illiterate to understand? Kenpachi asked getting a nod from the little pink-haired youth now sitting on Anko's shoulder. To put it simply, whoever put the first seal on Gaara did a piss-poor job on maintaining it or overloaded the seal with too many commands and made him mentally unstable and incapable of going to sleep without going on a homicidal rampage as a result, he explained as the two started to nod. I used another seal to knock him unconscious and keep him as such until I can fix his seal, so not only would he have better control over his sand but he could also sleep without having a mental breakdown or the insatiable bloodlust he's had, he said getting in, oh. From the two as he kneeled next to Gaara as he got out his ink and paint brush as he started to adjust it before finishing. Sitting back, his palm started to light with the same 5 flames again when he slammed it on the same space he did the Gogyo Fuin as he lifted Gaara and gave him to Baki, who nodded. All right Tamari, you and the rest of your team are to go to assist my summons at the hospital. Hinata-chan, do you think your team and Anko-chan can deal with any civilians my clones missed? I've got them spread around the village taking out enemy ninja, he asked getting nods from the group of 7 before they ran out the stadium. Guy, can you and your team get to the academy and make sure the kids get to the bunker? One of my clones were dispelled and they're in need of assistance, he said getting a nod when he saw Naruto grab Lee and put him on his shoulder. Where are you taking Lee? Tenten asked, causing him to turn to her. Trust me when I say he's safer with me and the others. Don't worry, Lee is in perfectly capable hands, he'll be fine now, go, he said getting nods from her sensei and later herself while Neji huffed. Asuma, I need you and your team to come with me, we need to protect Lord Menace and Lady Mai. Kenpachi, you and Yakiru are with us, we're going to need as much muscle as possible, he said as they all nodded while Zaraki had a sadistic glint in his eye. As they started to head to the daimyo's booth they heard, Naruto, Baka, what about us? Rolling his eyes he said, help around the village, it's more than likely buildings collapsed, make sure to get the injured out of harm's way and get them to the closest bunker entrance near your location. Running they all reached the daimyo's booth while ignoring the glares he received from his old team. Oh, daimyo's booth, oh. I hate to say this but I fear I'm getting old, I used to be able to handle myself easily, Menace huffed holding his bladed lance. I did say you lacked stamina, my friend, Mai said good-naturedly as she blocked a sword with a clawed gauntlet before slashing another at the throat with her dado. Yeah, smart, I get it, I'll get back to my training, he gripped as he ducked a sword strike to the back of the neck while he missed an enemy coming from behind him which was sent flying past him and Mai catching everyone's attention. Sorry to interrupt but we felt you could use the assistance, Naruto said drawing his Tensei Zangetsu as the others soon followed as he put Lee down against a wall. On Naruto Uzumaki, I have got to say I was rather impressed with your fights, Mai said as Naruto gave her an appreciative nod, thinking, with this many enemies here I may just be able to pull off a test run. You guys might want to take a few steps back just in case, Naruto announced as they complied as a purple-black energy discharged off his outstretched hand as he chanted. Sleeping crest of turbidity, arrogant vessel of lunacy, boil forth and deny, grow numb and flicker, disrupt sleep, crawling queen of iron, eternally self-destructing doll of mud, unite, repulse, fill with soil and know your own powerlessness. He chanted as Ino started before Choji slapped his hand over her mouth, pointing at the enemy ninjas, seeing black boxes starting to form around them. Hado number 90. Kurohitsugi, way of destruction number 90. Black coffin, he said as the enemies were completely inked when screams of agony were heard as when they dispelled what remained was the skewered remains of the enemies. Naruto, what the hell was that? Ino asked in both horror and intrigue at the technique as none of them felt the use of chakra but they felt some form of energy being used. I'll explain in a moment, he said, jumping in front of the two country leaders as a small house-sized fireball came bursting through the door as he extended his hands as to everyone's surprise he absorbed the fireball and threw a kunai at the man's head, killing him. Kneeling, he clapped his hands above his head and again at waist level saying, Hashigyo Sogai, 8 joined twin cliffs. To everyone's surprise, the room glowed yellow as they watched the enemy just ran past the room without even looking, getting raised eyebrows as his sensitive hearing he heard Ino's heartbeat speed up. Something wrong, Ino-chan? Naruto asked, opening one eye slightly when he saw her blush while looking at his eye and body. You don't have a shirt on, Naruto-kun, and your pants are pretty much non-existent, she said, making him raise an eyebrow before looking down to see she was looking at his 8-pack, making him chuckle. Yeah, sorry about that. During my time training I would end up having my clothes destroyed, so I just got used to not having clothes on. Hold on, he said, grabbing a scroll on his back pouch and released its contents, showing a spare shirt that was white with a purple-black high-collar zip-up kimono top and gray pants as he threw down a smoke bomb, letting him change. Alright, ask away, the enemy won't know this room even exists nor can they hear us, so ask any question, he said, examining Lee's arm and leg. First, what was that you just did? I didn't feel any chakra being used, but it had a similar feel to it, and secondly, what is with your eye? It went from the Sharingan to some 6-pointed shuriken, then it turned purple and it got rings on it. Ino asked as she watched him continue to look over the injured genin. To answer your questions in order. What you sensed is an energy I call Raryoku, or spiritual energy. The reason it feels similar to chakra is because it is one half of the energy used for chakra. The two techniques I used fall under their own category. They all fall under the main category of Kido or Demon Way. He started as he created two clones to deal with Lee as they each tattoo his injured arm and leg. Pointing to the yellow energy that could be seen outside the door in the viewing balcony, he said, the first is Bakudo, or way of binding. Techniques that can immobilize an enemy or have an effect besides a direct strike. Pointing to the remains of the enemies, he said, then we have Hado, or way of destruction. These are attacks that deal damage. And lastly, he pointed to the two clones whose hands were glowing green as they tended to Lee's arm and leg, saying, and lastly we have Kaido, or turn way. They don't have names or incantations as they just simply heal the target. So you're healing him? If that's the case, why didn't the hospital do it? Choji asked, getting a raised eyebrow in exchange. I'll take a shot in the dark. You don't frequent the village save for your family's compounds or the high-price district run by the civilians, he said, getting nods from them all, making him sigh. Well, I'll put it simply, the civilians ed the village to hell as the civilians lined their pockets and waste the money used for the ninja and the shinobi stores and instead waste it on unnecessary things like hot springs in every civilian family home, he said, getting a raised eyebrow from Asuma. And my father allows this, he said, getting a snort as the ring teenager looked at him. Asuma, no offense, but the title of Hokage, it just doesn't have the same worth as it did back during the Nadaime and Shadaime's reigns. Your father is a figurehead just making money for the village and hands out missions, that's it, and he knows everything that's going on and doesn't do anything about it, he said as he was grabbed by his collar into Asuma's face. And what's that supposed to mean, you little brat? He demanded, getting an uninterested gaze. Exactly as it means, Asuma-san. I mean, have you seen the way things are? Civilians have the ninja in their payroll doing senseless shit they could do themselves. I mean, really, painting fences. Pulling weeds. Yes, having highly trained killers are better used wasting several months doing someone's chores when we could spend it training and doing missions that could benefit the village and get in more pay. If they want someone to do it for the meager pay they got us working for, then pay the children in the academy as a way to learn how to work with different people before they officially became genin or a kid looking to make some easy yen, he said as he grabbed Asuma's hands, making him drop Naruto from how hard Naruto grabbed it. Brushing his shoulder, he said as Ino blushed, now getting back to the lovely blonde's second question. Now as for my eyes, my fair and lovely blonde. It was during the 2 months I've spent training I realized I had the Sharingan and Rinnegan. The Sharingan possibly from my mother's side of the family, and the Rinnegan is a big question mark. What you saw was my Sharingan's second form, the Mangekyo Sharingan. Surprised Ino was about to say something when a puff of smoke came between them as a small white tiger cub appeared as it said, Naruto ni, I have a message from Tigress Ne-chan. Smiling, he said, what is it, Byako? She says the enemy has began their retreat with that snake guy who was severely injured. The Sandame is injured but still alive thanks to those 2 masked ninja and that seal you gave that one guy to enter the barrier to assist them, the little tiger said as Naruto scratched behind its ear. That's good to hear. Where are Tigress and Suiren? Are things okay on their end? He asked, getting another nod. Yes, they're still picking off leftover enemies. I'll summon them over to here when they finish up on their end, he said, getting a nod before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Byako, cute cub and Tigress's little brother named after the first white tiger of their clan. We can all leave when they get here, he said when another seal array appeared when a larger plume of smoke appeared. It seems Naruto-kun's been having some fun, huh? They heard an alluring voice say when the smoke dispersed, showing Tigress and Suiren in the company of 2 older women who had a similar look to them. The first woman standing next to Tigress was taller than Naruto while she was slightly shorter than Kenpachi, or at least to his shoulder. Her hair was snow white as it reached her knees with brown, blue eyes with a pair of tiger stripes under them. Her skin was porcelain white as she held a regal elegance. She wore an all-black bodysuit that hugged her features, showing her curves while her feet and arms were bare, and a red rope sash was around her waist. On her feet were a pair of equally red bandages like Naruto's and an ornate black oak bow staff. This was Ranmao, queen of the Tiger clan, as she gave a fanged grin that matched her daughter's. Next to Suiren was a woman who looked similar to her, wearing a pair of black hakama and gray sleeveless tight Chinese top with gold lines spread across it. Her hair was a coal black that swept over her left eye, while her right was an emotionless crimson red that made you feel like she was staring through you. Like Ranmao, she held a similar regal appeal with a hint of poise that you'd see in someone of high social standing. On her hip were 2 long katana that were encased in a black sheath with a leviathan engraved in them. This woman is Shiva, the leader of the Leviathan and Suiren's mother. With an emotionless gaze as she looked around when it landed on Ino, she gave a soft smile which Ino returned it with a small wave, added. So Naruto-kun, care to fill us in on the situation? Shiva asked, getting a nod as he told them of the events that had transpired as they listened before nodding. All right, shall we go? We need to reach the Hokage Tower. There is the closest bunker as we can reach, he said. They all geared up with Naruto placing his swords in their sheath when he dispelled the barrier which Shiva had to whistle. I see you've got those Kekai Kido working, Naruto-kun, she said, getting a nod from Ranmao and the others as they all left the building. Oh, outside the Hokage Tower. Oh, it's not that far, only a couple of yards, Naruto said, running with the others following behind him when their way was blocked by a mob of Anbu and Konoha shinobi standing in the way to the bunker. Getting on guard, he said, You mind moving? We got to get Lord Menace and Lady Mai and Lee to the bunker. We still got enemy ninja running around, and the sooner we can get them to safety the easier our job will be. They brandished their swords when a Junin said, "Not happening, demon. You stopped Uchiha-sama from fighting and stole his clan's eyes. The Sandaime was a fool for letting you live, demon, and we will finish what Yondaime-sama started by fixing his mistakes." Turning his attention to the others, he said, "Keep them safe, I'll handle these guys." Ducking under a sword from an Anbu, he slapped an explosive note across his chest before kicking him into an oncoming group of shinobi, causing them to explode, making Shiva whistle, saying, "Maybe it would be best if we got out of his way." Come now, granted he's stronger than before, but I doubt he can single-handedly defeat a mob of Anbu and high-ranking Junin on his own. He is still a Genin AC rank at the least, Asuma said when Ranmao pointed back to the fight, showing Naruto had already decimated several Junin without drawing his weapons. "I think that would say otherwise, Sarutobi. We've trained Naruto-kun for a month and he defeated the two of us who have had hundreds, nearly thousands of years worth of experience in combat. Now I suggest we move," she said, ducking under a flying kunai.